All right, friends, welcome back again to another episode of Tactical Enlightenment. Our channel is dedicated to all things Bannerlord related, but especially advanced battlefield command and tactics. And welcome back again to both our Aserai campaign and our simulated Napoleonic retreat from Russia. If you haven't been following this series, I would strongly advise you go back to episode 59 or at least episode 60, where it explains what we're doing, where our army here, essentially an endgame challenge in this campaign. We are simulating now a retreat out of Russia, right? Our army made the invasion in. We took multiple cities that were part of sort of challenges that I set aside for myself for this end game. We completed those challenges, but now, however, the war of attrition is really starting to take its toll. Initially, we had an army of something like 4,500, and now we are down to some 1,000 very sturdy soldiers. Again, we continue to deal with the weather, and as with this whole series, we are both simulating and also reenacting Napoleon's retreat from Russia. You will see me display the temperature as we roll along. You will see me display things like the army status. And for the most part, I've done my best to make this be very similar to the Napoleonic campaign, right down to the timing of events. Some of it, of course, I've fudged some of the numbers just a little bit, just so that it makes a little bit more sense, right? We can't arrive at the Beresina River in January when Napoleon arrived at the end of November, but I've done my best here to make this campaign sort of a reenactment, right? A medieval version of a reenactment of this amazing retreat from Russia. Of course, I say amazing, it's also tragic, and we will continue to talk about that. This is interspersed between live action, between the two episodes. I realized the episode was going to be too long, and so what I've done is I've gone ahead and added these cutscenes with a little bit of narration. Now back to the live. We've got a beautiful village here for us to explore while we talk a little bit about clothing, the conditions of soldiers, their food, and of course the weather. And the weather, first of all, has got to start with the daylight. For those who don't live in a northern climate, there's very little daylight at the end of November in places like Minsk. In fact, I looked it up once and I still remember towards the end of November, the Napoleonic army was getting sunrise at about 9:30 and sunset at 5. Now, that doesn't mean the sun shines all day. Of course, it's cloudy, there's fucking blizzards, it's brutally cold. And the sun, of course, is far away, and so it's not exactly heating you, right? It's just sort of lighting up the landscape enough for you to trudge another miserable day. What were they trudging on, right? What kind of food? Well, honestly, at this stage, it was a complete mess. There were a handful of corps and divisions that were still eating well. Napoleon's Old Guard, for example, of course, these soldiers were taken care of very well, but a lot of the other soldiers were really eating hand to mouth, and I mean quite literally anything they could get a hold of. Bits and scraps of vegetables. A lot of times there was trade, right? Soldiers would get together and say, well, I've got a little bit of meat, you've got some raggedy looking cabbage, that soldier over there, Armand has a pot, let's make up a stew, and they would throw it together. It got worse, though, the longer the campaign went on. And, of course, I'm turning the map here now because we are presented with the main problem here. The French can't just figure things out and go to a supply depot. They are being fucking chased, right? Just like our army here, they are being attacked from multiple different angles. Of course, I can't get anybody to actually attack us in the map, right? We're just sort of allowing random occurrences to create the same kind of environment that Napoleon was in. But in his case, he was directly being chased by Kutuzov's army. And of course, the weather itself was chasing the French out of there. On top of that, from the west, there was an army under a guy named Chichagov who had about 30,000 troops. To the northwest, there was another army pushing back one of Napoleon's corps. I think that was Victor's corps. And that was Wittgenstein, and had something like 40,000 Russians, right? So there's three, maybe even another army of Russians that are in the neighborhood who could have struck Napoleon. You're talking 150 to 180,000 Russians all converging in on Napoleon's maybe 35,000, 40,000 fighting force. It's a very bad situation. So they're getting closer and closer, just like us, to Borisov here. I'm going to continue to demand troops from these villagers. And anxiety is peaking, right? And Napoleon is moving very quickly because he can sense a trap. He's getting reports that that Victor is being pushed back. And then he finally learns that Minsk fell, which is one of his key supply depots, and that those forces, those Russians that took Minsk, were now marching on Borisov. Now, in this case, Borisov is owned by the Batanians, and this fucking guy's still alive. This is amazing. Kaladog is in this city with 400 troops, and I don't see any large Batanian armies, but there's lots of smaller ones. So the Russians are closing in on Napoleon, and you have to remember back then, bridges were everything, right? If you have an army of 35, 40,000 people, God, this fucking guy, I hope he's not in the battle, although I guess it would make it more epic. This is one of the Nemesis characters. Let's see what he does here. I'm going to go, I think I'll go to this other town here and get even more troops. I've called in a couple very small armies. It's almost sort of simulating Marshal Oudinot joining Napoleon's army. That was another one of his corps that was helping to keep the path open. This small corps joined Napoleon and helped him fight at Borisov. So Marshal Oudinot actually pushed Chichagov out of Borisov and was starting to clear a path for Napoleon. But like I said, the bridges are essential. If you have an army of 40,000 and 100,000 stragglers with tons of carriages and horses and wagons, you need bridges. And of course, the Russians burned the bridge at Borisov. Napoleon was trapped. So what to do, right? Just like us here, what to do. I'm kind of stalling. I'm kind of hoping some of these Batanian armies leave Borisov so we don't have to fight them all. But they don't have any other cities, right? So they're going to have a lot of armies here. That's just natural. Of course, there's a gigantic garrison as well. Eventually, Napoleon, with some engineers, some Dutch engineers, they built a bridge to the north of Borisov. I'm just going to do a little bit of maintenance here. In particular, we are continuing to fulfill the desertion rate. I will post it kind of on the side here, and you guys at this stage should be familiar with what I'm doing, right? Not only am I piling up the best troops on Wazuban, but I'm making sure I can dump 75 troops to fulfill the desertion rate, and we'll have to dump the food as well, which we'll, glancing over, that's going to be most of our food. That sucks. So eventually Napoleon was able to build a bridge to the north. Of course, classic Sun Tzu. He pretended and openly started building a bridge to the south, and that obviously was designed to trick the Russians, which it worked beautifully. He had his other locations some 10 miles away from the main area at Borisov. They were building bridges, and these engineers are fucking dying. They're building bridges in ice, right? The Beresina River was a mix of sort of slushy ice, broken up chunks of ice, and it was wide enough that there was just no way they were going to be able to swim it. Also, of course, this is not a common knowledge today, but many people back then simply couldn't swim, whereas many people today might have been able to swim. Again, you have to remember you're talking the ultimate ice bath. You're talking water that's deeper than you can stand, is moving, and is chunks of ice. You must have a bridge. So eventually, the French did build a bridge north of Borisov. The Russians attacked them. I'm obviously not going to be able to enumerate all the details of the battle, but the French ultimately were able to push across. The whole ruse about where they were building the bridge worked magnificently. Now, the other tragedy that's part of the Beresina River, I think we will tell in the sieging process of this city. Although I guess there's another chance they sally out here, right? We're facing obviously a force considerably larger than our own. So again, I'm gathering up all of the best troops here and putting them Wazuban, especially the infantry, right? I've learned this. If you have these extra hit points from the medicine skill like Wazuban has, I tend to favor infantry over archers, and it's kind of practical, right? The infantry are they're the guys being hit by everything, stabbed by cavalry, slugged over the head by infantry, and shot by archers. So we'll make sure our palace guards have extra hit points. That means those palace guards, think about it, they can take a nasty shot from a Manavliaton and just shake their head, no, you didn't kill me, motherfucker, and keep on fighting. So that's how I've been doing that. All right, so we get our own battle at the Beresina River here. This was intentional. I knew that the Batanians would have a sizable force here, and it's not huge, 2,400, but it's large enough that it represents a major threat. Now, I might bait some of these other Batanian forces out of there, right? Sometimes you can get them to come out, and that would obviously be beneficial, right? If I could get even just a couple of those armies of Battania out there, it'll represent an easier siege for us. Sometimes they won't be baited out. Kaladog is still in there. He hasn't left. I haven't seen him come in or out. So sometimes they're doing that when they just don't have enough troops to form an army. So we will move in for the siege here, the siege of Borisov. Of course, we're across the Beresina now, but this is effectively, we're simulating, and ironically, this is where the battle happened. What happened? Something just... Oh, I paused it. So this is very similar to the Battle of Beresina. The French and the Russians did fight on the western bank. The Russians, of course, were doing everything they could to destroy the Napoleonic army, but at this stage, Napoleon had his forces concentrated and some very brave fighting by multinational units. I can't remember the exact ones that did great work. I apologize for that if that is your country of origin. But there was some really brave fighting, and ultimately Napoleon was able to break free. Now, can we break free here, right? The Battanians aren't coming out, so we're going to have a siege here, and there's always a chance that we get attacked by armies. There's a bunch of Battanian armies here. When you're in a siege like this, you can't see very far, so you just never know what you're up against here. No matter what, though, right? 100 defenders. In fact, I just realized that. It said 2,400, but again, it doesn't count the non-Battanian forces that are in there. Of course, we're at war with everybody except the Aserai, and so all of these forces are fighting against us here. I'm really surprised they haven't sallied out, but it is what it is, right? We will siege... Amitatis can be sieged. I know how to siege this city pretty well, so we will give this a shot. Now, as usual, right, we're going to build up some trebuchets here, a fire catapult. I might even blow holes in the walls here. I'm looking down at the time, winter 15. We just went through one of our food checkpoints. It's not natural, of course, what I'm doing with the food. Once a week, we're having this food dump. And we have 500 food, right? You could see that we're finally in dire situation with our food. But all we have to do is make it back to Vilnius, which is not that far away, right? We may suffer some deserters and lack of food on the way there, but this is probably the last battle of this campaign. After this, we will be in relatively friendly territory and make our way the fuck out of Russia. This has been the Gilman. Oh, shit. No. Fucking disaster. I just had a minor clan leave us. They just leave us mid-siege. This is not the first time we've been betrayed like this, but this is a really bad spot. The Battanians might siege or attack us now. Suddenly our force is 200 and something units less. They're not yet, but that makes us even more vulnerable. Now, we just had some reinforcements join us. Oh, shit. There's Valandians. Oh, shit. They have sallied out to attack. There's a Valandian army coming in, and they sally out. 2,600. Well, that's very interesting. It's not the full force. Some of the forces are staying inside, or I don't know what's going on here, but we've got ourselves a battle. The Battanians are sallying out. Caladog and his full-size force here wants to fight. So, I think we have the right gear, although I think it makes sense to switch to decreased taken ranged attack damage. And give this a shot, right? This is going to be hell. 2,600. And they're going to be ranged heavy. So we're going to have to be creative here to not be destroyed. Of course, we have another battle after this. The Valandians are moving in as well. So I just said there probably won't be any other battles. And here comes Valandia. This has been a marathon session. I've been playing now for 2.5 hours. Talking for 2.5 hours. But I've built up a little bit of endurance with that. And it's certainly helping. We get our normal units set up here, and then I'll explain what I'm going to do. I'm leaning towards what I consider my normal frontal defense, right? I'd like a peekaboo ridge. We will explore the landscape a little bit here, but I've got a great amount of shock troops, a good amount of archers. I've got slopes up the hill here. This is definitely going to work. We've got tons of shock troops in the 3rd and the 6th Division, right? So these guys are going to do major work. I've got enough cavalry to protect them, so we can do 2 separate cav lines with horse archers. I've got this archer division. I think I'll make the 7th. I think I'll make them horse archers and cav. Makes the most sense. So we'll run a crossbow division, the 4th. And what do we got here? This slope here is too weak. We've got a little bit of a ridge up here. Look at this. This is it. These now I sort of instinctually recognize. Can you see how you can't see the enemy there? That's our peekaboo ridge, right? So if the enemy brings up manifestly more archers than us, that's where we pull back to. So with that in mind, right, we're gonna position near it to handle the initial wave. I assume they'll have a ton of cavalry, although I don't really know. Obviously I can't look at what their army is comprised of, so we will prepare for the worst. So 2nd Division will hold the left flank here, 3rd Infantry behind them. I also have the 1st Infantry that I've started to use a little bit behind cavalry as a skirmisher line, right? They're mostly javelin throwers. That's one of the strengths of the Aserai, is a massive amount of javelin throwing units. So we will use that 1st Division, a little bit unorthodox in this battle. We will adjust on the fly, though, too, in case they have a bunch of archers. Now, 2nd over here, I've got the 4th crossbow wheel stick over there. The 4th crossbow is so versatile, right? Not only are these guys going to dump massive DPS into the enemy, but we're also going to be able to have those guys square and charge in the later stages of this battle. And this is obviously going to be a multi-stage battle, right? Even with the battle size mod, we have like 700 troops on the battlefield. The enemy's going to have all the rest, right? So 1,200-ish, 1,000 maybe if they have cavalry. They're going to have a butt ton of troops. Let's see what we got going on here. They've got mostly infantry, actually. 2 big groups of cavalry. They have it all, actually. They have horse archers, they have archers, and 2 wings of cavalry. So the infantry, that's a threat, right? They've got a lot of infantry. That's kind of daunting. We're going to have to do some quasi-killbot action here. But again, that 4th Crow crossbow, it's going to be delivered juicy DPS because they'll pound the enemy at range, and then we'll have them charge and hold fire. Every single guy up there swinging one of those maces, it's very deadly. I took a huge amount of damage somehow. There are Nemesis units in this battle, right? Some of the Battanian Nemesis are here, Nemesi, including one of their archers that has 500 skill, right? So she's probably the reason I lost 1/5 of my health to 1 arrow. That's normally not a thing. This cavalry's charging, and they kind of feel like, you know, they're like, yeah, we've got the edge on these guys, but look at how well our cav line defended. It just totally repulsed them and sent them packing. Over here they're charging, so let's countercharge. Hold fire with the 3rd Division and have those guys just destroy everything in sight. Horse archers coming in. In fact, Jav Cav, these guys are worrying because they'll not one-shot me, but they'll one-shot other units. And let's pull back because that vanguard is coming in. All right, we've got their main vanguard coming in. A javelin dump is going to help. Let's get the 3rd off of one side, the 6th off the other. Where's that? All right, so the 6th is here. These guys can start to peel over to the enemy's left. Look at how many fucking infantry. Of course, it's mostly high-end, too. I see legionnaires aplenty. I didn't talk about it, but just Caladog himself had something like 100 legionnaires. So we get a massive slugfest. All right, infantry into a square. Let's pull our 2 big shock troop divisions on the wings here. Our archers are close, but I don't think they'll attack them too bad. In either case, the shock troops collapse on both ends. I can bring the 8th Corps in here behind the enemy, and then we just have to close all this off to the enemy archers. I'm in here clubbing away, of course. 4th Corps can be told to charge here. We'll bring all those javelin throwers up. They've got a bunch of Fiend champs here. These guys are way, way too close. Very bad decision. And that is the kind of death span you want to see. Against all elite units, it's just fucking flushed green. All right, now we can open up our archers. Archers' corps can rain down on retreating units. They're getting strafed on the way out of here. Let's chase down some of their archers with cavalry. 2nd, 7th, and 8th. Let's kill who we can, and then we're going to reset. In fact, we may even go right to that Peekaboo Ridge. Let's kill some of these archers, though. These guys are trying to reset on us. Fuck you. They'd be better off standing, but then, of course, our infantry would just charge. It's lose-lose for these guys. They lost all their infantry support. They paid the price. All right, let's pull all these guys back. We're gaining levels. None of these levels matter, of course, because this campaign is at the very end, but it's kind of a nice touch. Still leveling companions here. This ridge is beautiful, right? I don't see any reason we wouldn't change it up until I see what the enemy has. 275. They've got a lot of archers. I think it makes sense for us to at least exchange some volleys here. With the elevation, we'll have a nice range advantage on the enemy. We can soften them up a little bit. We've still got most of our units have a decent amount of ammo. Because we charged with the 4th Corps there, those crossbow, one of the big advantages is now they still have ammo. So they did some damage in the initial wave. They charged and probably bitch slapped some legionaries around with the mace. They're like, hey, I got one of those too, motherfucker. I got reinforcements coming in here kind of vulnerably. They're getting attacked by horse archers. So we'll sick the 4th Corps on them. Right, again, all these crossbow units can't wait to fucking shoot. And again, now you get this 3rd wave of death from this crossbow division. And of course, they're still going to be able to fight to the death here, right? These guys are highly versatile. We are doing some jousting here. I'm not thrilled about it. Like, it's probably a neutral. It's like a push for us, but we do have a bunch of shields facing the enemy too. I think we'll work on their horse archers while if they want to send only horse archers, let's just try to wipe these guys out. These guys all shooting at us from behind. Fuckers. Now they're charging right through our divisions here. They're getting strafed by crossbow, and they're running right down the barrel. Yeah. Let's go ahead and get up this ridge. So it's a classic situation, right? If the enemy's attacking you, you have the luxury to do this, right? If we attack them, we could not do this. But since they attacked us, now that we've removed most of those horse archers, it's time to use this ridge. This is a process, right? This is something for most players to add to their arsenal. It does take some finesse. I'll try to explain this as I'm setting it up. Of course, it's vital that we win this battle, right? I can't afford to over-narrate here and fuck something up. But basically what we're doing is forming a very tight pocket of troops right at the edge of the ridge where the enemy archers cannot see us. Even if they come to the side, we can simply go over the other side of the hill. We're going to force them to come to us. Now, there's 2 ways you can do this. You can do an infantry rush with archer support on the side. My preference is to have archers placed back a little bit. Hurry up, boys. Move your asses. My preference is to set archers in big spraying spread formations towards the back here, where they have clear line of sight of that ridge, and as the enemy comes over, you open fire, right? And any of the enemy archers that are trying to shoot, they have to deal with hundreds of projectiles. Your infantry towards the front here will have the 1st infantry in a shield wall. Those guys have a few javelins left, probably the wildlings at least, the lake rats. It's been beautiful to have the lake rats. That fucking Gilman betrayed us, but at least we have the lake rat units still in this battle. Now, admittedly, they tried to leave earlier, right? These motherfuckers tried to abandon us. Now, these guys are probably a little high up. In fact, they're already being shot, right? If the enemy can shoot at you, they will not charge. They will just sit there. First, they'll just waste your time because they're not doing a bunch of damage. They've got a handful of horse archers in here, not really doing anything. These fucking sons of bitches. In fact, what are these? What is this shit? Is this your merit badge or something? It's a bunch of shock troops running up by themselves. That must have been a dare. They were like, I dare your whole company to run up there with no shields. And they're like, shit, man, put some money on it. I'll do that shit. Like a suicide. That was strange. All right, so that ridge right there, we want shields right at the edge of it. Preferably just at the edge of it. And the positioning here is essential. This is probably much harder for console players, but you want to have it so that the enemy can't see those troops. However, they're providing a giant iron wall and horse flesh wall of protection in case they send a bunch of cav charges, in case they send a bunch of... Now, these are more reinforcements. These are scrub archer reinforcements getting cut down by horse archers. Yeah, you better fall back. They're getting shredded. Now, you hear the rest of their troops down there charging. That's because they have to move up the hill right here, right? The AI is running through its different checklists. Shoot enemy. Can't see enemy. Move forward, right? Like it's literally going through all the code. And obviously, we're going to do everything we can to stop them from counterattacking this. Let's put some... All right, those are horse archers, but it's still horse flesh here. That's cavalry charging. Charge. 3rd Corps charge. In we come here. Look at the arrow barrage, right? These guys getting smoked. They're stood up. All these guys are scorched. Their charge didn't kill anybody. Let's give them the 1st, 3rd, and 6th on this charge. This is a larger charge over here, but they have no support. There's no archers here, and it's just fizzing green death spam to the bottom of the screen. I don't know if they got any kills, and their whole force got completely destroyed. But you got to be quick, right? Quickly pull these guys back. You don't want them charging over the ridge, because the exact same thing that happened to the enemy right there will happen to your troops. So reset these guys here. Nope. And I'm just going to continue to position them in the valley here. Now, this tactic takes timing, it takes patience, it takes understandings of angles, but I think with some practice, all of you guys can master this. And again, one of the big advantages of this strategy is that the majority of maps in Bannerlord have some kind of ridge like this that you can use. Now, a really good human opponent would come up here, right? They would bring archers up here, they would surround you, suddenly they'd be firing down right here into your ranks. But the AI is just not capable of that. Of course, I would love to face a human doing that. Hey, catch this, noble. This dipshit trying to attack our infantry. I got one for your face here, Zostios, right in the back of the head. All right, charge here with this shock troop divisions. Look at our infantry just holding the line there. Again, I don't see any kills. They got 2, 3, 4 kills there, and it's scores of the enemy being scorched. Their cav is all bound up. Our infantry's bellowing. It's fucking beautiful. All I see is horses dying. And again, as soon as they get to that edge, reset. With this strategy, though, realistically, consistently, you can take out armies 3 times your size, right? I mean this even if you have normal armies, not a god army like we have here. If you just do custom battles, you know, to do some practice, you will experience 3, 4, 5 to 1 kill ratios. Get the fuck out of here, Britannia. Bring more units next time. Kill more units, he says. It's 9 cavalry. They're going to charge our flank. Look out, fellas. The Britannians are coming in. I'm feeling mighty comfortable so far. Let's get a little better angle here. Oh, they're starting to pop their heads over that ridge. Come on. Just keep on coming, Britannia. Now watch this hail of arrows. Now, we're not going to engage, right? At range, just throw javelins. Let your guys work. If you ran out of ammo, then you would have to charge. But here, we still have ammo, right? We're being very careful with our ammo. There's probably going to be another couple waves in this battle, right? This battle's hardly over. They have a massive amount of troops down there, a huge amount of archers, and it looks like they're either getting reinforcements or just resetting. Can't really tell which. Again, this is the patience part. They're sending in little pathetic tier 3 and tier 4 cav charges. I mean, these guys really, they're better off charging the surface of the sun, right? These guys are immolated for sure. Our shock troops, these guys are having the most fun out of everybody, right? They come roaring up, and there's cavalry held in place, swinging little pathetic weapons. Just getting fucking absolutely carved. And we still have defensive lines. You can't charge this with cavalry. Your horse goes nowhere, right? They're instantly stopped. And then, of course, these guys get a little overzealous, and you simply bring them back. They say, come on back. You don't have the patience for this? I understand, but it doesn't take an hour, right? This is not a tactic that takes forever. It takes, you know, instead of a 30-minute, or instead of a 20-minute battle, it's 30 minutes. Now, I got these little pathetic tier 2 guys coming in, getting shot by this massive amount of troops. It's almost 800 troops down there. Right, we go over the ridge here, and the opposite result happens. We get exterminated. A lot of our units, of course, are wounded at this stage. We need them to come to us, and they're going to have to come to us, right? We're going to make them. They're gathering up another cav charge. What's this? Look at this little guy holding his shield up. Come on, dude. Get the fuck into order here. I think he's the one slowing the whole thing down. I got one guy holding up his shield. And they are steadily marching up. All right, now here's the other thing we can do, right? We can perform an enveloping maneuver on them. I've got this infantry, so one of the things we can do is form them into a shield wall and or a square. I tend to prefer a square here to protect all the shock troops. They're actually targeting the edges of our formation here, so we're going to tuck even tighter. You'll see the AI does this, right? They explore little weaknesses, and if you hear your shields being shot at, you better move your units, right? So we're going to tuck in a little bit tighter here, just getting a little bit lower on this ridge. But here's our counter, right? Infantry division in square. I can drag one cav division up here on this hilltop, and then as the units shoot, and charge, right? Shock troops, 3rd and 6th Division charge. That 1st Division, we will move to the enemy's right, uphill. That way they're throwing javelins downhill into the enemy ranks. And once they're in a square, then the rest of the units can charge. Archers can move forward aggressively while that square just gets shoved into the side of the enemy's ranks, right? They're not going to be able to do much damage, but all of their archers are going to get disrupted. Look at them just standing there like, I wish I had someone to shoot. And you don't, motherfucker. We've got a beautiful position here. Here they come. Now, this is the AI doing everything it can, right? It's trying to be patient here, and there's just no solution. In fact, their archers are trying to sit at the top of the ridge and shoot. We're happy to exchange some volleys here. How many archers of theirs are shooting? Right, 1/10. How many of ours are shooting? Every single archer, right? And so they're taking hundreds of arrow shots that are finding the holes in the shields, and almost nobody's shooting. I'm looking at them. There's like 3 guys shooting. And the rest of them are just being shot badly. All right, let's move this 1st Division in here. This is perfect. Right, we can start to advance this 1st Corps right on the side of the enemy here. They're charging down here, so the 3rd and the 6th can handle this little coordinated cav charge. And let's start moving this infantry division onto the enemy side here. Actually, now that they pulled back, I might wait. Yeah, you see how quickly you take damage there from coming over that ridge. We're mauling the cavalry here, right? It's kind of nice just to wait a minute. As long as those lines are holding at the center, let's just handle their cavalry here, and then we can make our enveloping maneuver. It looks ready now. Our archers are wailing away. I'm amazed their infantry's not charging, but maybe they see all our shock troops. They might think that they can just outshoot us. Well, they can't, right? Let's move the 5th up on this ridge. 2nd and 1st Division coming on this side. And let's just fucking plow it into the side of the enemy here. Big old infantry square. Most of these guys have their shields up. It's 100 guys that the enemy has. They're holding their lines. It's fascinating. We're going to get a royal fucking brawl here. But the square is just moving right on up. And now it's time just to fucking shove it through these archers. This cav division is told to pull to me. Right, that way all of these cavalry are in here attacking these guys. And the enemy archers here are fucked, right? They should be trying to spread out. They can't spread out because they can't shoot if they're spread out. They'll be out of range. Oh shit. Getting shot. But our cavalry is now starting to jam in here. This square is going to be right behind them. They're letting us just envelop them. I mean, it's 900 troops, so I suppose they want to fight, but I don't think they're going to like what's about to happen here. All our division units are pouring over the ridge here. We've got infantry on one of their flanks, just going to turn their flank, and in we go. Their archers are thinking twice now. Now they're like, oh shit, we might want to pull back. I've got cavalry cycle charging behind them, just butchering them. Man, they're forming a tight defensive knot. It's valiant, but it has no chance of succeeding. Gotta not take a spear here. Our troops are coming downhill on them. I mean, it's a steamroller. These guys are fucked. Wazuban and his shock troops fucking finally find their niche. What a crushing assault. I mean, they just got swallowed up and destroyed. It's not 100% death spam, but this Battanian force just died here. They're in a little tiny donut ring in the center here. And if I've ever said maelstrom too many times, this is the appropriate time. That is a maelstrom. There's just hundreds of units surrounding and destroying this Battanian force. I never saw Caladog. Maybe he's in here getting destroyed. All right, what else we got? There's probably more coming. There's 480 archer or 480 infantry, so we'll start to set up archers on the ridge here. A lot of these archers still have ammo. Now, we've got to reel in some of these aggressive cavalry. We'll start to reform our lines here because that was devastating, but the fight's not over. You prognosticators, you be quiet. Don't say what you're thinking. You know, steal a horse here. Thank you, bud. Good luck on foot. When you're the Sultan, you can do this shit. Our archers are doing good work. Our cavalry, it looks like it's cutting down a lot of the guys that are running. I've got one line of cavalry here just defending to provide a little bit of protection from their archers, and we're going to systematically move up our lines here. At this stage, we're ready just to close in on this enemy here, right? We have a clear advantage in strength of units. Some of these are reinforcements, and they're getting scorched. These guys they're like trying to shoot while hundreds of enemy infantry rushing them. But look at this infantry now. Vigla recruit. Man, is that a good sign, right? Time to bore in here. They're trying to get their archers spread out or reformed. They're in a big knot again here in the center. They got recruits. This fucking battle is over. Get a little slow-mo dismemberment for you fellas. It's all over now but the dying. Let's get the 7th, 8th Corps over here. We're going to wield our mace a little bit here as this battle ends. And man, that is a fucking satisfying feeling. Oh, they're all coming in for the bounty. Remember what I said before, though? You just kill the guys that are in front of you. Keep moving. Something tells me, though, the guys that are watching this are not brand new players. That could just be an assumption. And we get out our anger here on Caladog, these Battanians, and Napoleon and his army, right? We make our way across the Beresina. This is probably what it looked like towards the end. You had all these Russian fucking... they're all conscripts, right? Forced to fight, and they're probably running for the exits while Marshal Davout and his elite fucking corps just destroy everything in sight. Cuirassiers just ride down all the insolent Battanians. Beautiful. That was an extermination. I mean, 2,500 or whatever, 2,700 Battanians just fucking lit on fire. 430, 402, something like that, casualties. That'll work. We lost another wall. Nobody died from our main army group. And the culminating battle in this campaign, right? Like, we've finally finished this campaign. I know there's some of you, who want to conquer every city, every single last castle. Apologies, right? I did say early on in this campaign I was not going to do that. I can't imagine a scenario where people would watch, as there's 12 enemy castles and 6 cities left and 5 cities and every enemy force of 1,200, and we have 3,800 and just eviscerate and destroy everything. It would take a while, there's no doubt, but it would also be extraordinarily boring. And so probably not going to do that, right? Probably not. Although I just forgot, we've got this Valandian force to deal with here, so it's not quite over. I gotta take a piss. So let's see how we'll do this. We'll be right back. That's how we'll do this. All right, army's in actually really good shape, all things considered here. I thought we might even lose that battle, and 4/5 of our army is still okay. Oh, so that Valandian force, unfortunately, is heading off. I was hoping there'd be one more confrontation here, although it looks like they're traveling to a local city here to siege. So maybe there is one more battle here. Of course, this is going to be a battle, but this is sort of a perfunctory battle, right? This is not going to be a difficult challenge by any means, and so I'm going to use this time here. Let's see what we do here. I've almost got one of these walls down. We're just going to blow down this wall here. Of course, we're still trying to minimize our losses, especially if there's one more battle, whether we fight the Valandians in the open field or a siege defense. And so we'll spend this minute or two here talking about some of the stuff that the troops were going through, right? The troops and the people in general, because at this stage, like I said before, at the Battle of Beresina, and I want to make the point too, the Battle of Beresina, a lot of times we get in our minds it's this pitched battle in 2 hours. The Battle of Beresina really was, just like at Krasny, this was 3 days of battling and skirmishing and big brawls over here, and then a rear guard action as the French crossed the bridge as the Russians were pursuing them, and then some really strong advance guard as they pushed open the bridge basically for parts of the old guard and stuff like that. it was really a rolling battle. And as all of that was happening, you have all these civilians. And at this stage, the estimates are somewhere between 40 and 70,000. It's just so many, it's very difficult to get an accurate count, right? They have wagons, they have all kinds of shit. And these people at this stage are in really bad shape, right? Everybody is wearing hand-me-down clothing or any scraps that they could find, along the way. People, of course, were very readily picking up dead soldiers' greatcoats and whatnot, right? It's a complete every man and woman for himself. Obviously, there was still plenty of camaraderie, and people would try to keep each other warm at night. For example, the Russians would lay down half of their greatcoats on the ground. A whole division, like 150 men, would lay half of their greatcoats on the ground. They would all huddle together, and they would then put the greatcoats over the rest of all of them, and they would just sit like penguins and survive the night. The French weren't quite as advanced, of course, because they hadn't really dealt with the cold, although obviously they did similar things, right? Most people instinctively know that we will keep each other warm. If everybody's just on their own, we're going to be a lot colder. So clothing was a real issue, like I said before. Some of these really tough old guard guys, they were wearing women's underclothes and women's dresses turned upside down and turned into an extra shirt. You didn't give a fuck when it's 30 below what kind of clothes you wore, as long as it kept you dry, kept you warm. Wow, these guys aren't going to guard the door here. All right, we're just going to be able to shove right through this. In fact, I'm not even going to narrate here. We're going to shove an infantry division right through this pathetic Battanian militia. The courtyard is wide open for us to set up our murderers here, so I'm going to get back to my narration. Right, so clothing was ridiculous. Guys are just wearing silly clothing. You got these just blood-spattered old guard with big gnarly beards and mustaches, and they're wearing colorful ladies' dresses over their arms. Nobody gave a fuck what you looked like at this stage. Uniform inspections had long since ceased, right? Everybody's a mishmash of different things, except maybe your handful of like old guard or the very upper echelon of old guard units, right, that were still protecting Napoleon. They probably still had a lot of nice food and the best type of shelter. Some people did have tents, right? They did make sort of canvas-style tents and stuff like that. But there's also a lot of just chaos. Speaking of chaos, let's just charge these militia here and just mass murder them as they try to get positioned. This is purely for fun, of course, but it also lets me tell these stories for a couple minutes. See if this is the end of the campaign or if there's an actual Valandian force sieging. It was only an army of 900, so it might not really amount to anything. So again, food, I've mentioned it before. People at this stage are eating anything they can, and I truly mean anything they can. I'll try not to get like X-rated. Of course, it's not sexual, but just I'll try not to be overly graphic. But it's hard not to be when people are doing the kind of things that was occurring. And incidentally, of course, there was cannibalism. Not widespread, of course, but there were definitely instances where people were so fucking hungry that they would eat the dead, right? That they would eat the flesh of... They wouldn't kill people. They weren't stooping that low. Or there wasn't widespread people like killing each other for their flesh of their body. But there were definitely instances recorded and verified, with second and third hand opinions that there was cannibalism. So eating human flesh was a thing. Most people just ate everything else, right? And you hear all the old wives' tales. These were pretty true. Guys were definitely eating anything that resembled that used to be food, whether it was leather or something like that. You would definitely stick that in a pot. I remember a story from one of the officers. He made something that was called Spartan soup. And this was corroborated by other stories, so I believe this. Spartan soup, get this. And let me just tell you, see if this picks up your appetite there, fellas. How about have a little axle grease, right? That's what we'll start with. That's going to form the base of our smudge here, our stew. We'll put a little axle grease in. You mix a little bit of flour, because a lot of guys still had raw flour. And then you mix in snow, and occasionally they would add gunpowder for seasoning, and that was their fucking meal, right? Like I just told you, all those constituencies, most of us don't even consider them actual food objects, but you can eat axle grease. Right back then, of course, a lot of times it was probably animal tallow, animal fat. So you get a real picture of extreme desperation for food, for clothing, for shelter. A lot of times guys would cut down fresh branches of trees and try to burn them and then all huddle by them and they're getting all this acrid smoke, and their clothes would catch fire when they're falling asleep. Guys were freezing to death overnight on a regular basis. There are many reports by officers who said that they left their 15 comrades around a fire, mostly French, and the next morning he went to wake them up, and there's these 15 guys sitting around a fire, and they wouldn't move, and of course they all died of cold overnight. So really we're talking about a catastrophe of epic proportions here. I'll go into some more here. A little bit more of the, I guess you would say, would upset some sensitive people. So if you want to fast forward a minute, I'll try to slide some of this in. The horses in particular turned to food quite readily, right? If you're starving to death, you don't give a fuck, right? There were probably instances where officers might have protected their personal horse, but especially the pack horses, any horses that starving people got a hold of were quite readily eaten. And it was worse than that. A lot of times they would literally start cutting up the horse and killing them before they were dead. Like horses that were suffering, they're like, well, let's make sure it has some flesh on it. So the horses would be killed and or eaten while they were basically still dying. There were instances of blood pudding where people would knife, one of the hindquarters of a horse. We are going to check out this city here and see if there's a Valandian force. I'll take my time strolling over there. So they would knife a horse and then drink the blood of the horse, right? I know this is almost unimaginable for us, but if you're starving to death, if you haven't had a drink of water in a day, remember, everything is frozen, right? It's very difficult to get water. The whole situation is just horrendous. All right, let's spend a couple minutes on after the Battle of Beresina. You have these 40 to 60,000 stragglers, and this is some of the most horrific stuff of the whole campaign. So again, if you're sensitive, skip forward a minute. At the Beresina, remember there's one or two bridges. I think at one point there were two bridges, and one of them kind of collapsed, and they're rickety bridges, right? These were built in a hurry. Well, a lot of these hangers-on and civilians stayed back. When the rest of the army was crossing, they're being attacked by Russians. And eventually Russians started coming up behind the French as well. And so these civilians are trying to survive, right? They're staying between these two forces, and they didn't want to get outside their ring of protection. Well, the main French army moved across the bridge, and they started moving out, right? I can't remember the date, December 2nd, maybe 1st or 2nd. And a lot of the civilians had not crossed the Beresina. Well, the Russians moved in aggressively at this stage. And of course, the Russians aren't trying to kill civilians, but these guys are basically in the way. The Russians are opening fire with cannons. Humanity really has exited at this stage of the war. There's a whole lot of, I don't give a fuck, they're French people, let's kill them. They're opening fire, cannonading the people crossing the bridge. And so there's a gigantic panic swarm. People start pouring across the bridge, trying to get to the other side. And remember the numbers I told you, 40 to 60,000 civilians. I've heard higher numbers, and 10 to 20,000 wagons. Hello. Actually, this is, it seems like he's heading that direction. I guess he's clearly going that direction. So we do have a final battle here. Excellent. What do I do here? Okay, so this is a unique circumstance. I'm going to purposefully let this Valandian force beat us to the city. I know that's a little strange. I know that's a little bit... somebody out there is like, well, you're intentionally staging this battle. Yeah, I am, absolutely. That's the end of this campaign. Don't forget, this entire last campaign is somewhat staged, and what I mean by that is we're following this artificially pre-designed route, and we're dumping deserters and stuff like that. So we're just going to let this Valandian force and these other forces get to this city, and once they're all sieging together, it looks like there's several small armies there. Then we will break in. I think we'll break in and defend this city for one last titanic battle in this series. While they're getting there, some other armies are slipping in. Excellent. I'm going to get back to the Beresina River, right? We'll show these paintings because they really are, not only are they masterworks of art, but they just really encapsulate how chaotic and how terrifying it must have been for people. People are in carriages. People are injured. They're stuck in their carriages. There's horses. There's people. And you get this giant panicked press trying to cross a bridge. And it's not like these bridges have nice guardrails and shit like that, right? It's literally just a bunch of logs, rickety, put over this frozen river. The river's moving. There's big blocks of ice. People are falling off. People are screaming. And on top of all that, the Russians are firing cannonballs and shooting and carnage. It must have just been an absolute scene of panic and chaos as this 50,000 60,000 people have tried to cross these two bridges. And again, these are not huge bridges. These bridges might be 5 feet wide, right? So you have all of these people. Don't forget, the original army took 5 days to cross the Niemen River. Now they're trying to get to cross the Beresina, a smaller river, to be fair. And this is perfect. There's a bunch of Valandian forces swarming here. This is optimal. So you really do get a scene of absolute chaos, something like out of a movie. But of course, it also tugs at your heartstrings. There are women and children involved, right? This is a really, when I said tragedy a few times about this story, this is where the tragedy comes in. You've got cooks and blacksmiths and people that were there just to paint, right? We don't know of any actual painters, or I don't know of any actual painters and artists that died, but I'm sure there were some. You've got prostitutes dying. You've got wives of colonels dying. You've got the whole 9 yards, right? Just a sea of humanity trying to cross this bridge while they're being attacked, right? And people are falling into the river, drowning en masse. People are being captured on the other side by the Russians. They're having all their goods stolen. They're being executed in some cases, and in some cases they did that, the Russians later said, to put them out of their misery. Wow, there's a huge Valandian force here. Well, this is fucking, as the English would say, this is brilliant, perfect, right? I was hoping for a big battle. I realize this is contrived. I just let this battle happen, but that's okay, right? We're okay with that. This is going to make for one last sort of battle for all the marbles in this campaign, right? In both this final challenge campaign and this Aserai campaign. Wazuban and his 1,000 fucking heroic warriors are going to try to hold on to this city against a huge force of Valandians, complete with nemesis troops and stuff like that. We'll see how this goes. There's some almost like iconic sunset or whatever, beautiful lighting for this castle. It's really intricate, right? There's all these different walls. And this is one of the very few castles, or cities I should say, in the whole game where I like to put some archers on the walls. It has this narrow area in the center, and the enemy's archers are further back from it. So I will put some archers up on these walls here, maybe one of the other spots, and then we will kind of see how it goes. Of course, we're going to defend with squares, we're going to defend with troops in the courtyard, and at various different positions in here. And we can stick the second corps right here. All of these guys have javelins, so those guys can pound the gate. As they come through the gate, we'll move the square back and pound those guys with javelins. They need an infantry division there. Over here they got a siege tower over here. So we'll put some troops down, infantry down. How do I want to do this? Over here, I think they just have ladders. I don't see a siege tower. So we'll put an infantry block essentially protecting all these archers, right? There's this secondary ramparts, and this shit's sweet, right? Not a lot of cities have this. This is an intricately designed city, and so this is kind of like the perfect city for our last defense. I would not call this a perfect city to defend, right? You can't support both sides of it with one unit and stuff like that. But it is a really interesting city, so this should be fun. Again, it'll allow me to sort of finish some of this storytelling about the Beresina here. Stick a big archer division right here. I've got some fire catapults to work with. These guys will get shot at, but with their decreased range taken in banner and a lot of extra hit points, you have to remember half the troops on the battlefield right now have Wazuban's perks, and that means those extra 80 hit points. It's actually more like 110 hit points when you add up all the different categories. These troops literally have 200 hit points, so it's like having 2 master archers. It's not 1, it's 2, right? He has 200 and something hit points. Over here, the 4th is just in a giant spray. I'm not sure that's most optimal. You've got some infantry down there that'll help. Of course, they'll pound anybody coming up that siege tower. I could put the 5th here. It's kind of compacted in here. This part's very poorly designed. Most of this city is pretty good. A lot of these intricate walls that you can't use unless you're using like that scatter around mod. And anybody curious, I haven't been able to use the scatter around mod. It consistently crashes with my mod combination. So unfortunately, despite all the requests, I can't use it. Put some fireballs here right at the front door, and I think we're ready to wreck shop here and wrap up a few of these stories. So Napoleon, his army, they make it across, right? I know I just kind of blew the story for you. Obviously, Napoleon survives the Russian invasion. However, many civilians were captured. Obviously, plenty of French troops died at the Battle of Borisov. There were more heroics there, right, from everybody from Marshal Oudinot all the way on down. And you have to understand that one of the most traumatic scenes in the whole campaign is this 50,000 stragglers and fucking covered wagons and horses, everything just all in this maelstrom at the bridge at the Borisov. It's a real tragic situation, right? I'm going to show, obviously, these paintings, and I talk about it sort of romantically, I guess because I'm so fascinated by it. I feel horrible, especially for the civilians involved, but it is what it is, right? This shit happened, and so we might as well talk about it and acknowledge this shit. Now, they are shooting up here a little bit more than I expected, but you see how far away they are? Those archers are plinking our guys for 3 and 2. I don't think we'll lose too many guys there. So for now, I'm going to leave those guys there. Whenever I put archers on the wall, I like to go put myself in their shoes, right? So that I can see, are they getting pounded? Are guys getting knocked off the wall because they're getting hit especially hard? I like to, I'm going to eat the soup that I made for everybody for dinner. We destroyed this siege tower here, and we only need a couple of 3 shots. Damn, that was it already. I mean, instant killed. My skill level at this stage with Bannerlord Siege is gotten... it's very natural, right? I've had literally 500 sieges in the last couple of years, all these different series, all these different content, 10,000 hours of playing Bannerlord. Obviously, this game and I are, it's like an appendage on my body at this stage. But it's kind of amazing how comfortable you get. I would miss half my shots and shit. I was hitting, of course, Wazoo. The joke was that Wazoo was lighting villages. It was actually, the cutscenes were actually taken here. It's like episode 18 or something. We laugh about how reckless and wild it was when I was first starting to play with Wazoo. This guy's father, he was all over the place. Now we're dialed in. All right, so to finish that point here before we get to the heavy blows and they get into the city, the bottom line here is that from the perspective of the Battle of Borisov, many of the French escaped, and it was somewhat of a miracle, right? It was more Napoleonic brilliance, hard fighting by his soldiers, amazing work by the Dutch engineers to build the bridge. They built it about 10 miles, maybe 15 kilometers north of Borisov. Of course, the Russians were guarding Borisov. That's where they put the fake bridge. And that obviously helped as well, right? So Sun Tzu, a little amalgamation of all these different things, maybe 25,000 French got over the bridge, fighting French, and then maybe another 15 to 30,000 civilians. What does that mean? That means something like 10 to 15,000. I've seen higher numbers. Civilians died at the Battle of Borisov. A real tragedy. A lot of them, of course, were just taken captive, but you have to understand, everybody's starving. You think they're feeding their captives good food? No. In many cases, the Cossacks would literally take the clothes off the people they captured. Give us that coat. You can die or give us that coat. Right? You could picture it. A very grim situation here. Now, I'm just actually stalling right now because there's guys running up to this siege tower, and I want to bombard, or no, I guess it's just siege ladders, and I want to bombard the fuck out of these guys a couple last times here. We might as well do everything we can to win this siege because, of course, if we lose, all of this is going to look pretty silly. This whole campaign, we've been fighting our way through literally one extremely difficult challenge after another, and so I want to, even though I'm telling these anecdotal stories related to the Napoleonic campaign, obviously I want to focus a little bit and make sure that we can pull this off. It's already very difficult to fight big battles in Bannerlord, but to do so and tell history, historical anecdotes from memory, this is quite a cerebral challenge for me. I dig it, though. I'm not complaining. I just mean I'm going to be focusing a little at times here. So these archers are a little vulnerable. I'm not thrilled about that, right? The enemy you can see is coming up those siege ladders, and they're going to get in here. However, all those guys down there in the courtyard can shoot. All those troops down there, what is that, 100 troops? Anybody that gets maligned up here will get shot at. So what we can do is we can actually stick another division. They're going to be a little crowded up here, but then they have all that ground support, right? All those guys, as soon as they get attacked, those guys in the courtyard will scorch whoever's attacking them. So real tragedy at the Battle of Borisov. And I'll talk a little bit more, I think, at the very end of this about the wrap-up of the Napoleonic retreat from Russia. I would give you like a spoiler and say, hey, and by the way, here, we're just going to unleash javelins, right? Fire at will. Let these guys fucking flame javelins into the side of the enemy. The enemy is completely scorched in a death trap here. This castle has some really nasty crossfire locations designed. I mean, I'm super safe up here. Nothing can touch me, and we're just scorching everything. But a real tragedy, ultimately, right? The Napoleonic invasion into Russia was essentially a little bit of hubris by Napoleon. Let's see. We can do a little parkour here at the end of this episode. Oh, shit. Well, we lost a little bit of health, but that's an acceptable amount to join the action here. Club some of these bitches. Ah, this fucking guy. 80 damage. He did like a spinning 180 javelin throw and hit me right in the fucking neck. God damn it. You can ultimately, though, trace the fall of Napoleon to the Russian campaign. And a lot of people, they look at it later on and they say, well, that's where Napoleon went wrong. Sort of. There's no question it was a disastrous battle for Napoleon. But Spain was also a major problem for Napoleon. Oh, shit. We got all these lords in here. Step off, bitch. Give me your helmet, too, by the way. What are they, retreating? Oh, shit. Those are my troops. That totally looked like the enemy was regrouping. Sorry, dude. I drilled that guy right in the head. Well, you know what we would say there? Argyle says we win for sure. We got the sacrificial guy. Drilled him right in the head with a javelin. Look at how beautiful it is out there. There's like this flaming, ethereal, dreamy sunset light. The lighting in this game, just the graphics in general, are just fucking outstanding. Javelin right into the head for that guy as these dipshit Valandians come in. Napoleon was starting to really suffer attrition by 1812, right? He was already really suffering in Spain. That's a whole nother, series of videos. Of course, it's often referred to as Napoleon's Vietnam, and they're referring to how the Vietnam War really wore the Americans down with guerrilla warfare and whatnot. Napoleon really did suffer in Spain, and Russia happened about the same time, right? Spain is generally considered 1809 to 1812. I think Salamanca, the Battle of Salamanca with Wellington happened in 1811 or 1812. Maybe it was 1812 as well. You have to remember the French are fighting in multiple locations. They're fighting in Spain. They're fighting in Russia. While he's invading Russia, he's still fighting in Spain. These are really chaotic times for the emperor. And most people point to the Russian campaign, and especially the Spanish and Russian campaigns together, as Napoleon's downfall, and I wholeheartedly agree. My little amateur opinion here, I wholeheartedly agree. All right, so just what I was worried about. They're pouring up those siege ladders over there, and they are zerging the guys on the walls, but look at all these guys down here, right? Most of them don't even get a chance to shoot because there's so many archers scorching the enemy. As soon as they get up to those ramparts and start attacking our troops, you got 60, maybe 100 archers down here shooting. You can hear them click, 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 and every time they click, a guy takes 30 damage, right? It's a massacre. We're going to join them, though, right? I feel vulnerable, or I feel responsible for these troops. I guess I feel vulnerable, too, right? That was like a genius faux pas there. I do feel vulnerable. There's a whole bunch of enemies up there. I can call this corps to me, right? This infantry division. And these guys can help me fucking shove these Valandians out of here. Get up there, boys. I'm not actually gonna, tell you too much about ultimately what happens with Napoleon, because there's some small chance that the fellows on the channel that I do some more history reenactments with Napoleon, maybe the 1813 campaign, but more than likely I just talk about it during other side series and sort of give you the easy way of learning about Napoleon in history, right? You can just watch some Bannerlord. You can drive your car like some guys say they do when they watch the channel. That guy took over 200 hit points, that infantryman. I'll have to look at that later, but anyways, I'm hopeful that I can reinvigorate some interest in history for people. And of course, some of the guys on the channel already are interested in history. Hopefully I can continue to provide historical enrichment. I imagine there's plenty of guys listening to the channel that know a lot more about Napoleon than I do. So, obviously there's some guys that will leave corrections, and by all means, right? I've got a very strong stomach. I've got a head of confidence. I'm an older guy. I don't really mind being corrected. Try to keep it constructive. But whether you're French or Russian or Austrian or whatever it is, American, a professor, or just a Napoleon historian enthusiast yourself, by all means, let me know if I made gross misstatements during this campaign, and I will try to acknowledge it, and we'll correct our wrongs here. Now, the enemy's already beaten the shit out of this city, but they're piled up somewhere. I think they're piled up between the archers they have, and that big block of guys coming up the ladder over there. So I think we will do the old backdoor here. Let's give them a prison fucking bashing here. We will come at them from behind in the shower. We've got this infantry division here. This is the first. I've got the third we can drag out there as well. And we have like 4 divisions of archers because we destroyed the siege tower, right? The enemy only has these 2 accesses. We will guard the front gate effectively by default. And we're going to shellac these troops that are on this siege tower. I think I actually did this with Wazuban. Maybe it was Wazoo. I don't actually remember. Actually, yeah, I don't remember. It was one of Wazuban's first campaigns. We got aggressive against Valandia. This must have been like episode 25 or something like that. A long time ago, we did something like this, and I'm eager to finish this campaign with aggression. Right? We're not going to hide in our city like fucking cowards. Now that we've got sort of a head of steam, although these guys are coming in quick. I think we can blast these guys here, charge them with 2 infantry divisions, set up archers, and really just destroy this Valandian force in style. Their archers, I've noticed this before, their archers are positioned too deep in this city layout, and they can't see us. They're not supporting these troops. So these guys are getting shot from above because we still have 2 archer divisions on the walls, and we have all these troops down here now supported by archers, right? And I liked our chances. Not to mention, we've destroyed a lot of the high-end troops. At least that wave was weak, and so we're facing tier 4 units with our elite, old guard at this stage, right? You can, again, if you want to use all the parallels, we've got the Napoleonic old guard here, and these Russians are sending in conscripts. Let's teach them a lesson here, right? Let's fucking rip these guys up and win this campaign in style. Now, I can always retreat, right? If things get really ugly, if the enemy sends all their troops at once and we're getting slaughtered, we will get through the gate and reset here. But I'm pretty confident as long as I don't botch things as a commander, we can pull off a savage, final destructive assault here on these Valandians. Just a few points here while we do a little skirmishing here with the Valandians. They got all these troops stacked up over there on the ladders. They're trying to hold a square, but I think the barrage of weapons is eventually going to force them to break. Don't forget, even outside the city, you get unlimited ammo. It's a little bit of a gimmick, but basically in all siege defenses, if you're the defender, all of your troops, except the throwing weapons, get unlimited ammo. So we'll run out of javelins and throwing axes, but all these crossbow, these veteran sword sisters, they can shoot forever. The Fian champs are already nasty. Now you give them 100 million arrows, and you get a death spam that looks like that. They're sending over waves of like 20 at a time, so maybe we can put a square like right at the top of the hill here, right? And that'll basically just block one of the enemy's main routes to us. And then we have these 2 other infantry divisions that I'm basically holding in shield wall to absorb arrows, right? They're still shooting at us from down there, and these guys are absorbing a lot of arrows. We've got some overzealous troops here getting fucking throttled. Come on, wildling, I got you covered. And we'll square here. Now, Napoleon fled, and that really is the best description for it. At this stage, there had already been one coup attempt in Paris. A rogue officer and some others tried to conspire to overthrow Napoleon by force, the old military coup, and Napoleon had gotten word of it. Now, the coup was put down. Napoleon was secure in his leadership, but the confidence in Napoleon was shattered for a lot of people, especially his enemies, right? They no longer felt him as unbeatable. He had been soundly defeated in Russia, mostly by the overall strategic plan, but he made major blunders. Some of it were hubris, but some of it was also just assuming that your enemy is going to do the exact same thing every time. Alexander, by refusing to negotiate with Napoleon, basically fucked up his plans, right? Because he kept expecting Alexander to give him peace. Obviously, if there's peace, there wouldn't have been that extensive Russian assault on the way out. In fact, they probably wouldn't be able to stop it at towns if there was peace and demand food from the Russians, right? We've got peace. Give us food or we'll attack you again. And Alexander consciously said, I'm not going to give him peace, right? We're not going to, not only that, but we're not going to tell him, which is the most fucking brilliant move of all. While Napoleon was waiting in Paris to keep Napoleon wondering whether or not there was a message coming the next day, is it going to come today, where Alexander is begging him for peace. That is a stroke of shrewd statesmanship genius, and it proved to be decisive. in the Russian invasion. Obviously, Russian winter gets a lot of credit for it, and that's very fair. The Russian winter did cause havoc on the already damaged French army. But as the Epic History TV documentary covered as well, I've read it extensively in other places, something like half to two-thirds of the disease casualties were caused on the way into Russia. You wouldn't really think of it like that, but this is an age without vaccines, without advanced medical care. And if you got typhus and you're out in an army camp, a lot of the time you just die, right? You're malnourished. There's other guys that are sick around you. Maybe they're giving you multiple. Maybe you get typhus and the flu, and these soldiers were dying en masse. They were exhausted. The horses were dying, just like these poor Valandians here as this unstoppable Wazuban finished this campaign in style. I mean, this is ecstasy. I know these are tier 3 units, tier 4, tier 2 units, but talk about just a machine of death. He is, and this army is, right? The death spam is almost entirely green. The guys on the walls are shooting. We can get Arwa in here so that she can join the fun in this sort of, this iconic last slaughter of our enemies in this campaign. We will say this is the fall of the Valandians. Unlike Napoleon, right? We did our full campaign and we got out in style, right? We got out with full health and a kingdom secured. In fact, a kingdom expanded. Wazuban has conquered Bannerlord. This guy's character spec, I've been already contemplating an episode where I cover essentially how to make a Wazuban for your own campaign, because I personally, the more I play with this spec and this list of perks, the more I find this to be the best in the game. Now, it's definitely possible that your playing style will suggest a different spec, but I am going to have a video. In fact, it may already be released because I'm developing at the same time as filming this episode that covers sort of beast mode specs like this, right? Where you make not just a great warrior, but an incredible commander, where you have all the troops, have all these bonuses. You're a dominant siege overlord. You crush the enemy on the battlefield. Your troops are elite. You have all this medicine skill, so they have extra hit points. With the steward skill, your troops are cheap. They barely eat any food. It's just basically like an incredible combination of perks. And that looks like routing behavior. Let's charge these bitches off the fucking map here. Fucking put our fist straight up in the air for defiance and victory in this campaign. In this final destructive battle here against the Valandians. Oh, that was like 4,000, and they barely represented a challenge. We probably have 500 casualties at most. And that's with fighting outside the city. And look at these fucking colors, right? Our characters with this black and red look absolutely incredible. I mean, maybe I'm biased. I suppose I'm biased. But I just think this campaign was a sheer joy to play. It was a sheer joy for me to share this with you fellas. I really appreciate all the support over the last 3 months. Hopefully this is the kind of thing that gives people watching this joy for years, right? Look at our troops are chasing them down, cutting down every single last Valandian as they try to retreat. This guy's holding his flag and trying to cut guys down. It's fucking beautiful. Oops, reinforcements came in, never mind, and they just get added to the massacre here as our savage fucking war machine trucks everything in sight. There will be some side series from this. In fact, I may have already started like a Peasant Revolt side series or something like that. I'm still halfway in between on how to do exactly each of the side series, how to release them. But hopefully I can continue to entertain you fellas with Wazuban and his cohorts. 222 injuries here. Injured and dead, and 2,200 sent packing. Come with us, right? One last time here, we gather up all these insolent Valandian nobles. We need some good serving boys at our palace. Wazuban is going to live the high life now, right? He's going to be a beneficent despot. He's going to be an enlightened despot, right? Of course, suited for tactical enlightenment. We are going to have elections for every position except the Sultan. The Sultan is going to be for life. It's going to be hereditary, just like Napoleon wanted to do, right? We're going to rule. Our offspring will rule after Wazuban dies. In fact, I'm going to take a little celebratory run to one of the towers in this city here and wrap this campaign up, right? If you guys have watched to this point, of course, you must have loved this series, must have loved this campaign. And that's great, because as a fledgling YouTube content provider, That support has been paramount in me continuing doing this. There may be several down the road. I'm a 50-year-old retiring firefighter. There's certainly more creative energy in my brain, but of course we've got to work out the details. I've got to figure out some kind of way to make consistent, decent money with this in order to justify the enormous amount of time that I give up. But this has been a lot of fun. So I personally want to thank you fellas for all your support. All right, a deep breath here as we see this beautiful scene. In fact, maybe we'll make this our capital, kind of right in the middle of Calradia here. This is Jalmyrus. We've got a beautiful mountain area here. Wazuban's got a growing family. Of course, his family's not going to come of age in this campaign. And I don't think I'm going to, sort of continue this individual campaign. It's probable we'll do some side series and whatnot. In fact, like I said, you may already be watching some of those side series. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to release those. But in any case, this campaign is effectively wrapped up, right? Napoleon invaded Russia and suffered disaster. We invaded Valandia and the rest of Calradia, and we suffered, indeed suffered is the wrong word, we accumulated glory. This was just a fantastic run of battles. Some of them were more hairy than others, but that was certainly worthy, I think, of a grand final epic campaign. I had a lot of fun setting this up and sort of making things difficult artificially. Admittedly, you have to do that when you get to a certain skill level with the Bannerlord system, right? If you remember from the original episode, we had 15 years worth of food. Well, you can't simulate starving when you have virtually unlimited food. Evidently, they're preserving apples or something spectacularly. So, with all that said, fellas, of course, you still want to subscribe. Even though this campaign is over, there may be future content you enjoy. I appreciate that. Please leave all the comments you'd like here. Hit that like button. It just takes a quarter second. Spread the word if you want more fellas to see this, or if you want the channel to continue to grow. Remember, the channel growing makes it more likely that I'll continue making campaigns and content like this. It's not a sure thing I'm going to do this deep into the future. Now, with all that said, fellas, I appreciate you guys. I'm going to leave you this music and this sunset, and I will talk to you fellas next time.